If you have been following along or even playing through Sutherland's tale, you should have a good understanding of who he really is by now. He is a misanthrope and a seafarer that prefers to be surrounded by water, and he has a mysterious condition that renders his mind and memory fractured. After turning in all document stashes and listening to all of his conversations, the final act of his tale can begin. We are still looking for his brother Wyatt, and there is one lead left for us to explore. Before I continue, please make sure to leave a like and a comment for the algorithm so I can keep making these videos.
I do remember they were planning some big meetup, but when was it? Has it already happened? Maybe so. Underground was where he saw us all living. That was Wyatt. All he could see were bombs in the sky. Mushroom clouds. The end of the goddamn world. It wasn't my deal. Could never be. I need to see the horizon. The sun. I mean, without that, I say go ahead and drop your bombs. Get it over with. So, no, I could not walk that road with him. Never his fellow traveler. Just a misanthrope, like they said.
The notes from Document Stash 3 mentioned a meeting of some kind, which actually rang a bell for Sutherland. He knew of this meeting, but didn't know if it had already happened. Sutherland clarified some details about Wyatt and the Preppers. They were preparing for nuclear war. Considering they would have grown up during the Cold War, it makes sense that this fear of nuclear annihilation would be ingrained in them. The state of the world 3 decades after the Cold War was no better. Following the collapse, supplies and fuel were scarce and possibly even rationed in some places. Fear of war in such a time is completely reasonable. It's no wonder why there's so many nutcases on Great Bear Island. Their fears for the future were justified. These preppers were planning on using these personal bunkers to survive. They were preparing for Armageddon, and they certainly got it with the Quiet Apocalypse. But I'm guessing they were expecting something a little more nuclear. Sutherland and Wyatt were indeed very different despite being brothers. Wyatt only saw their homestead on the coastal highway as 2 out in the open. He desired to hide away in a more remote place. Sutherland preferred the open seas and would rather spend his time on his boat. Their lifestyles would put a divide between them, forcing them to go their separate ways. This doesn't mean they hated each other because they clearly communicated from time to time. Otherwise, Sutherland wouldn't know so much about these preppers and the caches.
There's one more bunker you can check. One of Old Man Joplin's in Pleasant Valley, on the way to Timberwolf. He wasn't in their crew, but Wyatt set up his prepper caches. There might be something there. It's like an itch I can't scratch. Not sure why I can't get it out of my head now. Let me know what you find.
Have you ever wondered why Hinterland kept this random prepper cache up by the Timberwolf climb after the prepper cache overhaul? Roughly 2 years ago, the old prepper cache system, which used to spawn them in random places, was overhauled. Now there are 9 static caches, 3 of which are themed after the 3 preppers that were part of Wyatt's crew. Well, technically there have been 10 this whole time. This 10th cache is exactly how it was before the overhaul. It is also one of the prepper caches explored by Astrid in Wintermute episode 3. This 10th cache was also raided by the Forest Talkers as a part of the Joplin's Bunker Raid side quest. And of course, Sutherland casually mentions this name, Joplin, out of nowhere. This 10th cache is where he suspects he will find something relating to his brother. This is the reason why the 10th cache existed. 2 years of planning ahead by Hinterland, despite the fact it was supposed to be 1, is quite impressive as a setup for the final act of not only Sutherland's tale, but also the conclusion of the Tales from the Far Territory. It all makes sense now why this prepper cache stayed in survival mode. With this reveal, there is only one thing left to do. The next place you must visit is one of Old Man Tom Joplin's prepper caches, which were also built by Wyatt. But first, there is the matter of the last few lines in this conversation. They are quite suspicious, especially considering if you know what happens next in the tale. He has a hunch that Joplin's prepper cache may have some answers. This will make a lot of sense after exploring his prepper cache. Across the Pleasant Valley, you will find this legacy prepper cache exactly where it has always been. Walking in Astrid and the Forest Talker's footsteps, you discover what remains of one of Tom Joplin's personal bunkers. Just like the other 3 prepper caches owned by Wyatt's crew of preppers, this one also held a secret. Only this time, the secret was much more elaborate and unexpectedly disturbing. After breaking down a wall of loose bricks inside of Joplin's prepper cache, you will find the charred remains of Wyatt and a note left behind by his brother, Sutherland. This is what Sutherland's note says. It made sense to leave you here, in your first build, the one for Joplin. He was the only one who didn't turn on you. It seemed right. You were always bugging me to write more, so I followed your lead and scratched down a few words to see you off, I guess. You were still burning when I found you. Your friends had run off into their holes in the ground, out of sight. Why did it all have to come to this? Why couldn't you make them listen? I didn't mean for any of it to happen. My damn leg. After you died, I couldn't stop them. The bunkers you built, your plans, they took them all. Except this one. There's a big storm coming, they say. All the wildlife is spooked. No one's standing eye to eye, brother. Maybe you got out just in time. Sutherland. Sutherland knew this whole time what happened to his brother and where he was. He just couldn't remember because, clearly, his mind has started to crumble. Through each set of conversations with him, it became more and more clear that his memory was fractured, his thoughts couldn't be kept straight, and his mind was lost in a deep fog. He is without a doubt suffering from the mysterious illness plaguing the island, the origin of which is still unknown to us. With this illness, the mind becomes inexplicably destroyed. Sleeping becomes an impossibility. Your past becomes a distant memory drowning in shallow water. It makes sense now why he had this hunch that Joplin's prepper cache would have the answers to Wyatt's whereabouts. He knew, but he couldn't remember. In writing, Sutherland confessed what happened. In fact, the preppers had confirmed their intentions in the documents they left behind. They were using Wyatt to get what they wanted. All they wanted was to have a safe place for when shit hit the fan. They didn't care about Wyatt as a friend. They only needed him for their plan. Once it was complete, they decided to dispose of him. Their meeting turned into murder. It is not known when this happened, but it had to be quite some time before the first flare. Someone had to hide Wyatt's body behind a brick wall, and that someone was likely Sutherland. Sometime later, the Forest Talkers would raid this prepper cache, and, after the first flare, Astrid would do the same. They did this without knowing the darkness that occurred there. Behind these walls was a corpse. The conclusion to Sutherland's tale, which is available at the same time as this video, will be linked on the end screen. If you enjoyed this lore video for The Long Dark, please make sure to leave a like and a comment for the algorithm so I can keep making them.